Islam is a religion followed by more than 1 billion people across the world. Its core message speaks of faith, discipline, justice, mercy, and moral responsibility. Yet in modern history, certain individuals have claimed to speak in the name of Islam while presenting interpretations that sharply differ from its mainstream understanding. One of the most controversial figures to make such claims was Osama bin Laden. To some, he presented himself as a defender of Islam. To others, he was a man who reduced a vast and complex religion into a narrow ideological framework. This script does not seek to justify, glorify, or defend him. Its purpose is only one: to understand what Osama bin Laden believed Islam was, according to his own words and worldview, and how he framed his ideology as religious truth. Osama bin Laden viewed Islam not only as a personal faith, but as a complete political and ideological system that, in his belief, must govern all aspects of life. In his understanding, Islam was inseparable from power, authority, and confrontation with what he considered hostile forces. He rejected the idea that Islam could exist as a private or spiritual matter within a modern global order. According to his statements, Islam was under constant attack. He believed that political dominance, military presence, and cultural influence from non-Muslim powers represented a direct war against the Muslim world. In his thinking, this conflict was not temporary or political, but permanent and religious in nature. He framed global events as part of an ongoing struggle between belief and disbelief, reducing complex political realities into a single religious narrative. Bin Laden's view of Islam placed heavy emphasis on loyalty and opposition. He divided the world into clear categories: those who stood with what he defined as Islam, and those who stood against it. Neutrality, compromise, or coexistence were ideas he largely rejected. In his interpretation, a Muslim was required to take a side, and silence itself was seen as betrayal. He believed that Islam demanded resistance against systems he viewed as unjust or corrupt. However, his definition of injustice was broad and absolute. Governments, institutions, and even Muslim societies that did not align with his worldview were labeled as having abandoned true Islam. This belief allowed him to position himself as part of a small group that supposedly represented authentic faith, while dismissing the religious authority of scholars, states, and communities. In his speeches and writings, Osama bin Laden frequently referenced Islamic history, especially periods of conflict. He selectively drew from historical struggles to present Islam as a religion permanently defined by confrontation, spiritual development, ethical reform, mercy, and social responsibility. Central themes in Islamic tradition were overshadowed by his focus on struggle and opposition. He emphasized the concept of sacrifice as the highest expression of faith. In his view, devotion to Islam was proven not through character, patience, or service to humanity, but through willingness to endure hardship and loss for a cause he defined as religious. This interpretation reduced faith to action alone, removing moral nuance and ethical restraint. Another key element of his understanding of Islam was authority. Osama bin Laden rejected the legitimacy of most contemporary religious scholars. He accused them of being compromised, politically influenced, or afraid to speak what he considered truth. By doing so, he elevated his own interpretation above centuries of established scholarship, framing himself as a voice of clarity in what he described as an age of corruption. He believed that Islam required the restoration of honor through dominance. In his narrative, the decline of Muslim societies was not due to internal failures such as injustice, lack of education, or moral decay, but because Muslims had, in his view, abandoned confrontation. This belief ignored the diversity of Muslim experiences and reduced historical complexity into a single cause. Osama bin Laden also viewed Islam as incompatible with Western political systems, values, and cultural influence. He rejected democracy, pluralism, and international cooperation, seeing them as tools designed to weaken Islamic identity. In his ideology, Islam could not coexist with systems built outside his interpretation of divine authority. Importantly, his understanding of Islam left little room for disagreement. Difference of opinion, a long-standing feature of Islamic intellectual tradition, was treated as deviation. This rigidity created an ideology that could not evolve, adapt, or self-correct. Any challenge to his beliefs was framed not as intellectual debate, but as hostility toward Islam itself. Many mainstream Muslim scholars strongly disagreed with this interpretation. They argued that bin Laden's view stripped Islam of its ethical foundation and ignored principles such as the sanctity of life, justice, mercy, and accountability. They emphasized that Islam does not grant individuals the authority to redefine faith based on personal grievance or political frustration. While Osama bin Laden claimed that his beliefs were rooted in Islam, critics argued that his ideology was shaped more by political anger and personal interpretation than by comprehensive religious understanding. His selective reading of scripture and history created a closed system of thought where Islam became a tool to legitimize a predetermined worldview rather than a source of moral guidance. Ultimately, his vision of Islam was narrow, absolutist, and confrontational. It did not reflect the lived reality of the vast majority of Muslims, nor the diversity of Islamic thought developed over centuries. Instead, it represented one man's attempt to redefine a global faith through the lens of conflict and power. Osama bin Laden claimed to speak in the name of Islam, but what he presented was not Islam in its entirety. It was his interpretation, shaped by ideology, grievance, and rigid belief. Islam, as understood by millions across cultures and generations, is broader, deeper, and more complex than any single voice. It is a faith that encompasses law and spirituality, discipline and compassion, strength and restraint. Understanding what Osama bin Laden believed Islam to be does not mean accepting it as truth. It means recognizing how powerful ideas can be reshaped when religion is filtered through personal conviction rather than ethical balance. History reminds us that when faith is reduced to ideology, it loses its soul. And when religion becomes a tool rather than a guide, it no longer reflects the values it claims to defend.